Humanity defies a galactic test, but a darker force awaits. Are we ready for the galaxy? We watch as distant stars flicker and planets drift silently through the vastness of space. In the quiet expanse, the delicate balance of the universe hums with harmony, a peace that has lasted for millennia. For 1,000 years, humanity has coexisted with extraterrestrial civilizations, trading knowledge, resources, and culture in a quiet, unspoken alliance. But now that peace is shattered, the harmony is broken and the sound of war reverberates through the galaxy. It begins with a single message, a declaration from a powerful alien empire. Their words are calm, cold, and direct. Humanity has crossed a forbidden threshold. A deadly technology has been developed, violating cosmic laws that had been set eons ago. The message ends with a chilling command: humanity must surrender, or the galaxy will wage war. The news spreads like wildfire. Governments scramble, military advisors race to formulate plans, and scientists are suddenly thrust into the spotlight, analyzing what exactly the humans had done to provoke such an attack. There is a certain tension that fills the air, but beneath that tension, there is also an unmistakable sense of disbelief. 1,000 years of peace gone in an instant. Humanity had never faced such a threat, not from any alien species, at least not one that had been willing to challenge them so directly. "You won't believe what I've just heard," Commander Jacobson mutters to his colleague as they watch the broadcast unfold. "They're declaring war on us because we invented a new kind of propulsion technology. They say it violates their sacred space laws." "You mean we crossed some imaginary line?" his colleague Lieutenant Thompson chuckles. "Typical. They get all high and mighty when someone new enters the field." Jacobson can't help but laugh. "You're damn right. We're a species that built skyscrapers and survived nuclear wars. This is just another Tuesday for us." You won't be able to stop being curious, but before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And with that, we move straight into the story. The universe is about to learn just what humanity is made of. In the days that follow the war declaration, humanity scrambles into action. The world's leaders convene in hastily arranged meetings, their faces pale as they stare at the messages from the alien empire, each word carrying the weight of cosmic war. The United Nations, the EU, and military coalitions all make their initial moves, mobilizing troops, fortifying defenses, and more critically, seeking out any surviving advanced weaponry from past conflicts. But among all the confusion, there is something odd. While other civilizations, both alien and human, prepare for the worst, Earth's leaders, researchers, and citizens seem to remain strangely calm. Sure, there's fear, there's uncertainty, but there's also an unmistakable spirit of defiance. And oddly enough, optimism. People are nervous, yes, but they aren't panicked. They don't hide in bunkers, they don't hoard food supplies, and they certainly don't get overwhelmed by the idea of war. Instead, they're doing what humans do best: they're thinking of solutions. In the halls of the White House, President Harlan stands before a vast array of military officials and scientific advisors. His brow is furrowed, his expression thoughtful, but there's a light in his eyes, a flicker of determination. "So let me get this straight," he asks. "We've just been slapped with a declaration of war because we've built a faster-than-light engine and crossed some intergalactic boundary, and now they want us to bend the knee. We've been warned. Am I missing anything here?" General Adams, standing at attention, nods gravely. "Correct, sir. The enemy believes humanity's rapid technological advancements have now made us a potential threat to their galactic order. The alien species known as the Xaril believe that their right to govern this sector of space is being jeopardized. They demand that we cease all further research and halt our development. And the problem with that," the president continues, smiling slightly despite the gravity of the situation, "is that they've clearly underestimated us. We've survived nuclear wars, genocides, and the rise and fall of our own civilizations. This is just a bigger stage, and we're good at dealing with challenges, right?" The room bursts into a mix of uncertain laughter and hesitant nods, but the president's confidence is contagious. With a deep breath, he continues, "All right, we're going to handle this the human way. We're going to innovate, we're going to adapt, and we're going to outsmart these guys. I need the best minds to help me think of something they won't see coming. No one expected us to make it this far, and I'm damn sure no one's going to expect what we do next." Meanwhile, in a research facility in Geneva, Dr. Elena Rodriguez is leading a team of scientists as they desperately try to understand the alien weaponry they've just received. Early reports from their reconnaissance ships suggest that the Xaril possess technology far beyond human comprehension shields that can deflect the most advanced Earth weaponry ships, capable of traversing intergalactic distances in a matter of minutes. But for all their advanced tech, the humans remain undeterred. Maybe we're all a little crazy for thinking we can win this, Dr. Rodriguez laughs nervously. But if there's one thing I know about humanity, it's that we always find a way. There's no panic here, just a desire to make it work. We can't let them think we're backing down. And indeed, across the planet, the mood is strikingly similar. There are no mass evacuations. People are not cowering in fear or making last-minute preparations for the end. They are, dare I say it, preparing with a casualness that confounds the enemy. Humanity's resilience is being tested, and instead of breaking, they are transforming their nervous energy into something far more powerful: humor. In the United States, late-night talk show host Jimmy Fallon opens his show with a joke. Well, folks, it looks like we've been declared war on by some aliens who say our spaceship is too fast for their taste. You think that's bad? Just wait until they see our Wi-Fi speeds. On the other side of the world, in a small Chinese village, people gather to watch the broadcast, smiling and laughing as they sip tea. It's a far cry from the typical reaction one might expect when facing the wrath of an advanced empire. Even in war-torn regions, there is a flicker of hope, a belief that humanity's collective spirit will see them through. People hold up signs that read, "No need to panic. We've faced worse before." And as the days turn into weeks, the leaders of Earth begin to form their strategy. They know they're underpowered, and they know they can't rely on conventional methods to win. But they're not going to fold. Instead, they're going to do what humans do best: turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. In the chaos of military strategy meetings, there's a recurring theme: humor. The situation isn't funny, but it's a coping mechanism that has always been humanity's strength. As Earth's leaders discuss military tactics, one officer even offers a suggestion: to make the enemy underestimate them. Let's send them a picture of our troops dressed as clowns. They'll be so confused they won't know what to do. The room bursts into laughter, but the absurdity of the suggestion serves to highlight something deeper: humanity's ability to remain steadfast in the face of danger. They're taking the alien threat seriously, but they're also reminding each other not to let fear take root. The stage is set. The war has begun, and humanity's response is a strange blend of cautious optimism, biting humor, and a burning desire to prove that they are more than capable of defending their place in the universe. The next few weeks unfold like something out of a movie, albeit a movie where the scriptwriters had a strange sense of humor. As Earth's military ramped up its preparation for war, it quickly became clear that humanity was no longer the underdog in this fight. Sure, the Xaril had superior technology, fleets of ships capable of striking at the heart of human colonies in mere moments, but humanity had one thing that the Xaril could never account for: an unshakable spirit of determination and the sheer unpredictability that came with being human. At the United Nations, a global coalition of leaders sat around a massive table. Some were visibly stressed, others uncertain. But there was one thing they all shared: the unspoken belief that they could outsmart their alien invaders. "We need a plan," President Harlan said, looking around at the assembly. "We've got the technology to fight, but that's not enough. We need strategy deception, something they don't expect." General Adams, whose hands had been tightly gripping his chair since the moment the war declaration had been read, straightened in his seat. "We have all the best tech, and we've done simulations on their weapons. They're formidable, but we've faced worse. The key is to make them believe we're weaker than we are. We need to use misdirection. Let them underestimate us." The room fell into silence as each leader digested this. Finally, Dr. Rodriguez, who had been quietly taking notes on a tablet, spoke up. "We don't need to fight them with brute force. We need to confuse them. Throw them off balance. They think we're weak. They think we're disorganized. Let's use that." The tension in the room lightened a bit as Earth's leaders began to realize that the key to success didn't lie in trying to match the Xaril strength for strength, but in being, well, more human. Back at military command centers, the real preparation was happening. It wasn't just about developing weapons anymore. It was about getting inside the Xaril's heads. Over the next few days, the military strategists unveiled their new approach, unconventional warfare guerrilla tactics, and above all, humor. A series of unorthodox tactics were developed. Fake signals were sent to mislead the Xaril about Earth's military positions. Soldiers wore bright mismatched uniforms to confuse enemy surveillance. And as the final touch, humans began to distribute a series of alien messages designed specifically to baffle the enemy. "We're going to show them what it means to be human," General Adams said with a grin as the new propaganda was rolled out. "They might have ships that can travel through the stars, but we've got something they can't match: our creativity and our weird sense of humor." The most bizarre of these efforts came in the form of counter-propaganda. In one particular video, an Earth soldier standing in front of a camera proclaimed in a serious tone, "The Xaril have made a grave mistake. They think we're too weak to resist, but we have something they've never seen before: an infinite supply of coffee. No one can withstand the sheer power of our caffeine." The video ended with the soldier sipping from an oversized coffee mug. It was absurd, it was ridiculous, and it was effective. Xaril military intelligence intercepted the video only to be left scratching their heads. Was this some form of human trickery? Were they truly so powerful, so resourceful, that their most deadly weapon was a cup of coffee? The Xaril found themselves on the back foot, unable to predict the next move. What kind of species could send a military commander into battle only to confuse the enemy with coffee, a species that had survived wars, famines, and existential threats since the dawn of time? Meanwhile, the battle raged on in the skies. The first full-scale attack from the Xaril fleet was as brutal as expected. They decimated Earth's orbital defense grid with terrifying precision. Yet despite the devastating loss, the humans never faltered. Instead, they adapted quickly. Some fleets of human warships disguised as civilian transport vessels slipped past enemy lines, launching surprise attacks with guerrilla tactics. They used their advanced understanding of space combat to their advantage, slipping through the cracks in Xaril strategy with a natural ease that confounded their enemies. In one notable encounter, a small human fighter squadron executed a maneuver so unexpected that even the Xaril couldn't believe it. Rather than engaging head-on, the human pilots took to weaving erratically through asteroid fields, creating massive amounts of debris to shield their ships. In the chaos that followed, they not only escaped destruction, but managed to damage several Xaril cruisers in the process. "Well, they didn't see that coming," one of the human pilots said as he pulled his ship out of the debris field. The laugh was almost as potent as the weapons he had just used. The aliens, for all their advanced technology, couldn't quite grasp the essence of humanity: unpredictable, emotional, and relentlessly resourceful. The combination of human ingenuity, quick thinking, and pure grit was starting to turn the tide of the war despite the overwhelming power the Xaril had at their disposal. But the real shock came when Earth's military command received a transmission not from the Xaril, but from an unexpected source. It was a broadcast intercepted by human reconnaissance ships from a leader of a long-ignored alien species who had been watching humanity's battle unfold. "Humans," the transmission began, "your response has been unexpected. It seems that the Xaril are not the only species capable of surprise. Your resilience, your ability to adapt under pressure has impressed many of us. While we have been watching from the shadows, we can offer our assistance. But first, let us speak." Humanity, it seemed, was not only proving itself in the eyes of the Xaril, they were proving themselves to be a force in the universe, a force that no one, not even the most advanced alien civilizations, could afford to underestimate. And as Earth's forces prepared for the next battle, a message came through unexpectedly. Humanity's response to the alien threat wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that the galaxy would now have to deal with a new formidable player: humanity itself. The war had escalated quickly, and the next wave of attacks from the Xaril were much more organized. Their fleet, though technologically superior, had underestimated one thing about humanity: their ability to adapt, improvise, and recover. Despite the damage Earth had suffered in the first few battles, human morale remained unnervingly high. Humanity had the uncanny ability to turn even their losses into fuel for their war machine. But something even more unexpected was happening. Humanity was starting to win, winning not with superior firepower, but with a weapon that the Xaril had never encountered before: creativity. It wasn't just in the form of tricks, fake videos, and tactical subversion, though those had worked wonders. It was in the fundamental way humans approach problems with humor, boldness, and above all, unshakable confidence. The unexpected transmissions from the alien leader who had offered help still puzzled many, but those who received it knew one thing. The war wasn't just about fighting off invaders, it was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. If there were beings willing to offer their help, there was no mistaking it anymore. Humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. In a secluded war room, a team of Earth's finest strategists gathered around a holographic map, their expressions intense. President Harlan stood at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something far more resolute. If we're going to have a future out there in the galaxy, we need to think bigger. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're going to turn the tables. General Adams, always the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. What are you suggesting, sir? We can't just beat them at their own game. They have the power to obliterate us in an instant. We can't beat them with firepower alone, Harlan replied, a smile playing at the edges of his lips. But what we can do is make them question everything they thought they knew about us. We'll show them that humanity doesn't fight like everyone else. We don't always have the most advanced weapons, but we've got something better, an unbreakable spirit. And humor, Dr. Rodriguez added, her voice filled with a mix of amusement and incredulity. Are we really going to keep using that? It's working, yes. But we need more than jokes if we're going to win. Humor is part of it, Harlan said. But creativity is our ultimate weapon. We'll take what we know about the Xaril and turn it on them. Let them underestimate us. Let them laugh at our videos, our fake retreats, our unexpected ambushes. Because when they do, they'll never see what's coming next. The planning continued with renewed vigor. While the Xaril were preparing for the next large-scale assault, Earth's forces were preparing a surprise that would leave their enemies reeling. Then it happened. The first full-scale human counterattack came out of nowhere. It began with a series of small, highly coordinated human raids on Xaril supply lines, all done with a sense of chaos that was uniquely human. They didn't attack head-on in a conventional manner. Instead, human forces began launching surprise quick-strike missions where they used unconventional tools, anything from decoy drones that released clouds of bright smoke to broadcasts of a seemingly endless loop of sarcastic human commentary. One such broadcast had a human commander in full military uniform sarcastically asking the Xaril, "Did you bring snacks? I'm going to need some, after all this destruction." While the enemy was baffled by this unusual behavior, they underestimated the true nature of the human strategy. The ambushes weren't about winning a single battle. They were designed to demoralize, to create confusion, and to sow doubt in the minds of the Xaril about their understanding of humanity. It was working. Every encounter left the Xaril more confused and frustrated. Every victory, no matter how small, had humans grinning in the face of overwhelming odds. The final twist of the night came when a group of human fighter pilots, using makeshift technology that had been adapted from civilian and military equipment, managed to infiltrate a Xaril flagship. Not by using firepower, but by tapping into the enemy's communication systems and transmitting what else comedy. They streamed live footage of Earth's funniest moments, stand-up comedy routines, late-night shows, viral cat videos, and memes. The reaction from the Xaril fleet was unexpected. Their commanders couldn't fathom why this human broadcast wasn't just an insult, but a genuine psychological weapon. It was causing chaos. Their soldiers, despite being technologically advanced, couldn't handle the mental fatigue brought on by what they now considered a psychic attack. Back at Earth's command center, the room erupted in laughter, not from mockery, but from sheer disbelief. "It's working," one of the commanders said. "They're losing control." "We've just thrown them off balance," General Adams replied with a grin. "Now it's time to push, but we're not going to do it by being predictable." Meanwhile, the tide of battle began to shift. The Xaril, unable to predict what humanity's next move would be, started retreating in strategic confusion. Their fleets, usually impeccable in their timing and precision, were now scattered. Humanity was doing what they did best, working as a collective, making it all seem like chaos, but it was calculated chaos, a symphony of disarray. As the unexpected victories piled up, the aliens began to take notice of something much more disturbing. Humanity's resilience wasn't just about fighting. It was about surviving, adapting, and learning. They didn't need the best technology. They didn't need to outgun the Xaril. They needed to outwit them, and that's exactly what they were doing. In the midst of the disarray, the Xaril fleet, struggling to regain their footing, reached a conclusion they hadn't expected. They weren't just facing an inferior species. They were facing a species capable of turning its weaknesses into strengths. And worse, something even more terrifying for a galaxy-bound empire, humanity didn't just survive adversity, it thrived on it. As they regathered, the Xaril leaders started to ask the one question that no one had prepared for. Could this be their true purpose? To test humanity? The realization hit the Xaril leadership like a crashing wave. For all their advanced technology, all their superiority, there was something in humanity that defied logic, something intangible yet undeniable. It wasn't just their resilience, their humor, or their tenacity. It was their unpredictability. The war in all its brutality and chaos was beginning to feel less like an invasion and more like an experiment. Something didn't add up. The Xaril were not prepared for this reaction. Humanity had been tested before, but never like this. Never under such cosmic scrutiny. In their command centers, the Xaril commanders conferred in low, tense voices. They had expected humanity to buckle under the weight of the war. They had expected terror, panic, and desperation. What they got instead was an open defiance laced with an almost disturbing sense of humor. It was as if the humans in their struggle had found joy in the absurdity of it all. It was maddening. "This is not what we anticipated," one of the commanders, Zorath, growled, his compound eyes narrowing. "They should be afraid. They should be terrified. But they fight with laughter." Another, a strategist named Learn, nodded gravely. "It's not just the humor, Zorath. It's the way they adapt. We've launched 3 waves, and they're still executing tactics that confuse our every move. The human mind is unpredictable, and it's exactly that unpredictability that's making this impossible." "But they are weak," Zorath argued, slamming a fist onto the table. "They don't have our technology, our fleets, our weapons. They should be crushed by now." Learn shook his head, his long antennae twitching. "It's not their weapons that worry me. It's their ability to think outside the box, to turn everything we throw at them into an advantage. And that's something they do without even trying. They don't just resist, they innovate." Zorath sighed, turning away from the table. "I don't care about their innovations. We'll overwhelm them with numbers. But what if they are more than just a nuisance?" Learn's voice was measured, but his words held a deeper weight. "What if we miscalculated? What if humanity's potential is something more than we realized?" In the midst of their heated discussion, Zorath turned to look at the Earth communication signals they had intercepted. There on the screen, a new transmission flickered into view. It was a message not from Earth's government, but from a group of citizens, just ordinary people broadcasting live. The screen was filled with the image of a large group of civilians all standing together in a field. Behind them, a banner read, "Humanity vs. Xaril, who's up for a dance-off?" Laughter echoed from the speakers as humans dressed in military fatigues and casual clothes alike began dancing in unison to an upbeat song. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. But as Zorath watched, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that these humans weren't just mocking them, they were inviting them to participate. And worse, somehow they were winning. "What is this?" Zorath muttered under his breath, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. Learn watched in silence, his expression unreadable. "This is what we're facing, Zorath. It's not just a war, it's a test of humanity's will." Zorath shook his head. "A test for what?" "To see if they are ready," Learn replied, his tone serious now. "They've been watching humanity for 1,000 years. They've studied us, observed us, and now they're testing our response to danger. They want to know if we're truly ready for the challenges of the universe." Zorath's eyes widened. "You think this is all just a game to them?" "It's more than that," Learn said, looking up at the stars. "We're not fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for our place in the universe." Back on Earth, as the war raged on, humanity continued to defy all odds. Each attack, each strategic maneuver, was a reflection of humanity's incredible adaptability. But perhaps the most unexpected element of their resistance was their sheer refusal to acknowledge defeat. Despite the looming threat of annihilation, humans weren't buckling. They weren't surrendering. Instead, they were finding ways to fight with everything they had, both their brains and their hearts. In Europe, a global coalition of military and civilian leaders met in secret to discuss their next steps. The human response to the Xaril threat had exceeded expectations. Each successful skirmish, no matter how small, had boosted global morale. People were beginning to believe. They were beginning to feel that maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance to not just survive, but to thrive. I'm telling you, we've got this. Lieutenant Commander Sofia Alvarez said, a smile creeping across her face as she glanced around the room. We've got the Xaril where we want them. They thought they could intimidate us, but we've thrown them off balance with every single attack. Still, General Rodriguez replied, his voice grim. We need to keep up the pressure. We don't know if they're going to bring everything to bear on us next. Let them, Sophia said confidently. They'll underestimate us again. They'll think we're weak or disorganized or just too naive. And when they do, that's when we hit them hardest. Across the room, President Harlan stood up. And let's not forget something important, people. It's not just our resilience or our tactics. It's our creativity, our unpredictability, our humor. It's going to be the thing that ultimately wins this war. General Rodriguez stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. It's a strange kind of weapon we're using, sir. But you're right. It's our greatest strength. The conversation shifted and plans were laid out to prepare for the inevitable next phase of the war. But one thing was clear. Humanity wasn't just trying to survive anymore. They were determined to win. As the human forces moved into position, prepared to take on the next wave of Xaril ships, a strange transmission interrupted Earth's communications channels. It was a garbled message, a distorted signal filled with static. But when the distortion cleared, Earth's military leaders heard a familiar voice. It's time to talk, said the voice. A Xaril commander this time, no war declaration, no demands, just an invitation. The war, it seemed, was no longer a battle for survival. It was something more, something that could reshape humanity's future. The message echoed through every command center, every communication network across Earth. It was brief, disorienting, and as mysterious as it was unsettling. It's time to talk. The Xaril commander had said, the static of their transmission barely masking a subtle sense of urgency. It wasn't a surrender, but it wasn't a threat either. It was something different. For a few moments, there was nothing but stunned silence in the war rooms. Earth's leaders and military personnel exchanged looks of confusion, skepticism, and curiosity. After the alien assaults and the endless series of combat, the Xaril had suddenly decided it was time to talk. What the hell does that mean? General Adams muttered, pacing in front of the tactical map. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture as rigid as ever, but his eyes betrayed his surprise. We don't have time for games, President Harlan replied, voice steady. Contact them immediately. Let's find out what this is about. The decision was made quickly. The coordinates for a secure communication link were sent, and within moments a new signal appeared on the screen. This time there was no static. Instead, the screen cleared to reveal the face of the Xaril commander, this time looking far more composed, even neutral. No threats, no demands, just calm, cold eyes staring at them through the screen. Greetings, humans. The Xaril commander said, its voice oddly smooth. I am Commander Velen of the Xaril fleet. The war you've been fighting is not what you think. It was never about conquest. It was never about domination. It was about something else. General Adams narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? Your species, Velen continued, its tone unshaken, has been watched for over 1,000 years. Your rapid advancement, your technology, your culture, your ability to adapt to the universe is unlike anything we've ever encountered. We need to understand if you're truly ready for what lies beyond your world. The tension in the room deepened. The command center fell silent, and the only sound was the hum of the communication equipment. Earth's leaders exchanged nervous glances. The true purpose of the war was not war at all. Wait a minute, President Harlan said, his voice rising slightly with the realization. Are you saying this war was a test to see if we could survive? To see if we're ready for something bigger? Commander Velen's alien eyes flickered with something that might have been a hint of amusement, or maybe it was something darker. Yes, but more than that. We needed to see how you would respond to real danger, how you would react when everything was on the line. Would you crumble under pressure, or would you rise to the challenge? The room was filled with shocked murmurs. Earth's leaders were struggling to process what they were hearing. A war, a brutal, near-apocalyptic conflict, had been nothing more than an experiment. General Adams took a deep breath, standing up straight. You put billions of lives at risk for an experiment. That's monstrous. Velen's face remained impassive. We've studied your species for millennia. We have learned much, but now we know enough. You have passed our test, not with your weapons or your technology, but with your resilience, your creativity, your ability to adapt. You think we passed? Dr. Rodriguez spoke up, her voice filled with disbelief. You think because we didn't break under your assault, we're somehow ready to join the rest of the galaxy? Felon nodded. You are. But understand this was only the first step. The galaxy is a dangerous place. The true challenges lie ahead. You are not yet ready, but you will be. We are here to help prepare you. A deep, unsettling silence followed the Xaril's words. The notion that humanity had been tested, that all of the bloodshed and suffering, the unexpected victories had merely been part of a cosmic examination, was almost too much to bear. They had fought not for survival, but for something greater, to prove themselves worthy of the universe. We don't need your help, President Harlan said, his voice hard and steady. We fought this war on our terms, and will continue to do so. But you should know this, we don't back down. We don't surrender. And most importantly, we don't forget. Velan studied him for a moment, then nodded. I never expected you to surrender. We did not come here to conquer. We came to understand. Humanity has exceeded all our expectations. We have no interest in your world's destruction, only in its future. The aliens' words hung in the air, and the tension that had plagued Earth's leaders slowly began to dissolve. Not because the war was over, but because the nature of the war had changed. It was no longer about resistance or defense, it was about something else, something even bigger than the galaxy they had known. We'll need time to process all of this, General Adams said, finally breaking the silence. But rest assured, Commander, humanity will not be subjugated by anyone. We'll make our own way forward. Velen's expression softened, if only slightly. Of course, and that's why we chose you. Not because we think you need our help, but because you have the potential to stand alongside us. The galaxy needs you, humanity. The universe is shifting. The real challenges, the cosmic dangers are out there. And if you want to survive, you must face them. With that, the screen flickered off, leaving Earth's leaders in stunned silence. Outside the command center, the night was quiet. Stars shimmered overhead, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The war, which had seemed so urgent, so all-consuming, was suddenly reduced to a stepping stone. The real journey, humanity's true place in the universe, was only just beginning. President Harlan, looking out the window at the stars, whispered to himself, I guess we'll have to show them that humanity is ready for anything. The galaxy, once a distant, unfathomable mystery, was now within humanity's reach. And the strange, unexpected war had become the first test in what was to be the grandest challenge of all. In the weeks following the unexpected revelation, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to digest the enormity of what had just transpired. The Xaril were no longer perceived as invaders or conquerors. They were cosmic observers, testing humanity's resolve, creativity, and adaptability. The war, though devastating, had ended in a strange sort of victory. Humanity had passed their test, but that only raised a new set of questions. What did passing mean in the eyes of beings who were already far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered? The news spread across the world, and humanity's mood shifted from one of anxiety and fear to one of cautious optimism. There were still people mourning lost lives, still cities recovering from the battles that had left scars on the earth. But the overwhelming feeling now was that they had proven themselves capable of something great, something that no one, not even the Xaril, had expected. In the United Nations, world leaders met again, but this time the conversations were different. Instead of scrambling for ways to defend their planet, they now debated how to move forward. Would humanity be integrated into the galactic community? What role would Earth play in this new chapter of cosmic history? And most importantly, what would humanity do with this newfound potential? Everyone is asking the same thing. President Harlan began addressing the assembly. What does the future look like for Earth? Will we continue to be an isolated species, or is it time we step out into the universe and claim our place among the stars? He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The Xaril have given us a choice. They say they'll help us prepare for the cosmic challenges ahead, but we don't know what that means. We don't even know what the future holds. What we do know is that we have the potential to shape it. At the back of the room, Dr. Elena Rodriguez raised her hand. She had been Earth's leading scientific mind throughout the war, and now she was at the center of the conversation about humanity's place in the galaxy. I think it's time we stop seeing the Xaril as simply our testers, Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice firm but thoughtful. We've been thrust into something much larger than any of us realized. Humanity has always been a survivor, but this is our chance to evolve into something more. We've spent thousands of years fighting each other. Now we can work together with other species. And I think it's time we start asking not just how we survive, but how we thrive. The room fell silent as Dr. Rodriguez's words sank in. She was right. This wasn't just about surviving in a universe full of unknown dangers. It was about adapting, about evolving into a species that could stand shoulder to shoulder with others in the cosmos. Yet even as discussions about humanity's future flourished, there was an undercurrent of skepticism. The Xaril, though impressed with humanity's resilience, still remained an enigma. Their offer of partnership was not unconditional. What did they really want from Earth? And more troubling, still, was humanity ready for the challenges that lay ahead? There was no answer. There were only more questions. Meanwhile, the Xaril made their presence known not as conquerors but as guides. They sent emissaries, a few from their own species and others from different races, who had worked with them in their long tenure as cosmic observers. These emissaries arrived in peace, offering technology, knowledge, and wisdom that could help Earth avoid the pitfalls that other civilizations had fallen into over the centuries. One such emissary, a tall crystalline entity named Xaril, arrived in the United Nations building to address Earth's leadership. Unlike the Xaril, who were humanoid, Xaril's form was ethereal, shimmering with an iridescent glow, and spoke not with words but through a form of thought transfer, which Earth scientists had struggled to understand. Humans, Xaril's presence resonated in their minds. You have learned much. Your ability to create, to adapt, and to thrive despite insurmountable odds is rare among the species we've observed. You have come far, but the challenges ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine. It was as if the whole room was experiencing a collective weight as Xaril's words took root. We offer our guidance, Xaril continued, but know this: the universe is not a place for the weak or the unprepared. It will test you. You must learn quickly and not just survive, but flourish. Are you saying you want us to become part of some galactic order? President Harlan asked. The question was on everyone's mind, but it was also the question they didn't want answered. Xaril's form seemed to shimmer, almost as though the being was amused. The choice is yours. You can remain isolated, protect your planet, but know that eventually you will face the challenges of the universe alone. Or you can join us, and together we will shape the future. The room was silent as these words echoed in the minds of all present. Earth's future, it seemed, was no longer solely in their hands. The universe was opening its doors, but humanity was still standing at the threshold, unsure whether to step forward or turn back. Meanwhile, the Xaril began to send more messages. Their empire, a vast network of civilizations, had seen humanity's response to their challenge, and they were impressed. Humanity was not the easiest species to predict, but they were undeniably resilient. And the Xaril's test had only reinforced their belief that humanity was ready for more than just survival. They were ready to challenge the cosmos. As the days passed, Earth's leadership began to consider the possibility of collaboration, not just with the Xaril, but with other alien species. There were rumors of alien factions who had observed humanity's remarkable resilience and were eager to join forces, knowing that Earth could be a valuable ally in the face of cosmic threats. Humanity, once isolated, now found itself on the cusp of something far greater than anything it had ever imagined. The stars were no longer just distant lights in the night sky, they were now within reach. And Earth, for the first time in history, was truly part of a much larger universe. The question then was not whether humanity could survive. That had already been answered. The real question was, what would humanity do next? As the reality of Earth's new place in the universe began to settle, President Harlan stood at the forefront, leading a world that had just been handed a key to the stars. The days of humanity standing alone in the vast cosmos were over. The doors to the greater galactic community were now wide open, but the path forward wasn't clear. For all the promise of new knowledge and alliances, the challenges ahead were monumental. In the weeks following the Xaril's test, a new form of diplomacy emerged. No longer did humanity have to fight with their fists or weapons alone. The battle now was for understanding, for cooperation, for forging bonds with alien civilizations far more advanced than humanity itself. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter written in the stars. The world's leaders convened in an extraordinary summit, this time not in military strategy rooms, but in peace talks. Representatives from various peaceful alien civilizations arrived in Earth's orbit eager to meet humanity. Some of them were humanoid, but others were unrecognizable to human eyes, beings made of energy, others of liquid-like forms, and some that were so radically different that they defied description. But what they all shared was a recognition of humanity's unique spark, the raw potential that lay in their adaptability and strength. The first day of the summit was filled with wonder and confusion as humanity's representatives met the alien emissaries. The humans were awestruck by the sheer diversity of species, but they couldn't afford to be starstruck. President Harlan had a singular focus: how to ensure Earth's survival and how to make humanity's place in this new galactic community a reality. But as the talks began, something unexpected happened. Despite the overwhelming power of the alien factions, they were not the intimidating forces humanity had feared. Instead, they were curious, even humbled by the resilience and creativity that humanity had shown. The Xaril, after all, had believed that humanity's survival was the greatest indicator of their potential, but the other species that had watched closely saw something even deeper. They saw something beyond just military might: humanity's ability to evolve in the face of adversity, their capacity for empathy, and their creativity. Dr. Rodriguez, now working as Earth's lead negotiator, had a particular moment that changed the course of the summit. As she stood before a council of alien leaders, each more daunting than the last one, question rose to her mind. What does the galaxy truly need from humanity? She asked, her voice filled with both curiosity and wariness. The alien leader, Azir, the crystalline emissary who had first made contact, responded, "We need your unpredictability. We need your ingenuity. The universe is filled with power, but it lacks creativity. Your species has a rare gift, the ability to adapt, to think outside of the boxes that other species have built for themselves. We do not seek to dominate you, Dr. Rodriguez. We seek a partnership. The galaxy is changing, and there is much at stake." The room fell into a thoughtful silence as the implications of this statement settled in. Earth, once considered a small and insignificant planet in the grand scale of the universe, now found itself at the center of a cosmic web of power, potential, and responsibility. The negotiations were no longer about defense or survival. They were about integration, collaboration, and humanity's place in the future of the galaxy. But not everyone was convinced. The same skepticism that had marked Earth's early response to the war still lingered. Some on Earth's leadership team remained wary of the alien offers, worried that the true motives behind the peaceful overtures of the Xaril and other species were not entirely transparent. "How do we know this isn't just a way for the Xaril to keep us under their thumb?" General Adams had said at one point, his voice filled with suspicion. "How do we know they aren't just using this peace to prepare for something worse?" It was a valid concern. After all, the Xaril had started the conflict under the guise of testing humanity. They'd seen the strength of humanity's willpower, but could that same strength be their undoing in the face of even more dangerous threats? President Harlan, ever the optimist, chose to take a different approach. He didn't dismiss the threat entirely, but he also recognized that in the grand scheme of things, humanity had already proven something invaluable: they were capable of making their own choices. No matter how many alliances were forged or tests presented, humanity's fate would ultimately lie in its own hands. "We can't ignore the possibility of a greater threat," he told his advisors, "but we also can't ignore the opportunity we have here. The galaxy needs humanity, and we need it too. This isn't just about Earth anymore. This is about all of us together moving forward." And so, despite lingering doubts, humanity took its first steps into a future that was both exhilarating and daunting. They were no longer the underdogs of the galaxy. Earth had proven its worth not just in military might, but in the strength of its spirit, in its capacity to evolve and fight for what was right. The first official agreement was signed, humanity's first galactic treaty. It wasn't just a peace agreement, but a statement of intent. Humanity was now part of something far larger than themselves. Earth representatives, along with the Xaril and several other species, pledged to share knowledge, technology, and resources. But they also pledged to stand together against the darker forces that lingered beyond the known galaxy, forces that even the Xaril feared. In the aftermath, as President Harlan looked out over the summit, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey humanity had just undertaken. What had begun as a brutal test of survival had evolved into something unexpected: an opportunity for growth, collaboration, and exploration. And perhaps most importantly, it had shown the galaxy something crucial: humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with. They had survived the war, they had passed the test, and now they were ready for what came next. The future was theirs to shape side by side with the other species of the galaxy. And as the talks continued, as new alliances were formed and plans set into motion, humanity realized something profound: they had won. Not just a war, but their rightful place among the stars. As humanity began to settle into its new role in the cosmic order, Earth's leaders faced the monumental task of integrating into a galactic community that was as diverse as it was vast. It wasn't just about adopting new technologies or learning to coexist with countless alien species. It was about forging something more: an identity that stretched beyond Earth, beyond their isolated origins, into a shared future with other sentient beings. Humanity's relationship with the Xaril had set the stage for this shift. The Xaril, having recognized humanity's raw potential, no longer saw them as a threat to the galaxy's status quo, but as a future ally, a partner to help stabilize the galactic balance. It was an alliance of sorts, but one that came with both opportunities and challenges. Back on Earth, there was a tangible sense of excitement in the air. People who had once looked up at the stars in wonder now found themselves part of a much larger story. Global unity was growing, with countries and corporations putting aside old rivalries to pool resources in preparation for what lay ahead. New generations of scientists, diplomats, and explorers were training to represent humanity in the cosmic community. But even as the optimism took root, many on Earth still questioned whether they were truly prepared for the unknown. In Earth's new Galactic Council headquarters, representatives from various species gathered for the first official intergalactic summit. The conference was a turning point not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Humanity's inclusion was a symbol of what could happen when species worked together for a greater purpose. And yet, despite the promises of peace, there was an undercurrent of unease. Old enemies lurked just beyond the horizon, and new threats, possibly more dangerous than the Xaril, were waiting to be discovered. The summit itself was an overwhelming experience for Earth's representatives. In a room filled with species as varied as anything humans could have imagined, a simple human presence felt both out of place and yet incredibly significant. The humans were small, their bodies fragile compared to many of the towering alien beings in the room, but their presence held weight. The eyes of the galaxy's leaders were on them. President Harlan, now at the center of humanity's diplomatic efforts, stood at the head of the table. He was surrounded by representatives from Earth's top military, scientific, and political minds, but even they seemed overwhelmed by the diversity of species present. As he glanced around the room, Harlan's mind wandered back to the day he had addressed the United Nations, his confidence now tempered with a sobering understanding of what it meant to be part of something this vast. One of the first things he noticed was the lingering distrust of humanity from some factions. The Galen, a highly intelligent and secretive species of energy-based beings, maintained an aloof stance. They hadn't yet fully embraced humanity's potential, and some even whispered that the humans were a danger to the greater peace. The Xaril were quick to defend humanity, but the doubt was still there. Some of the other races, who had spent millennia in galactic isolation, regarded humanity as a wild card, untamed, unpredictable, but potentially crucial to future stability. And then there were the Chrysouls, large armored creatures whose species had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. They were pragmatic, logical, and cautious, offering little more than polite nods as the humans took their seats. Their focus seemed less on cooperation and more on ensuring their own survival in the changing landscape of the universe. Despite the tension, there was also hope. Azir, the crystalline Xaril emissary, had become an unlikely ally. He had taken a special interest in humanity's development, not just from a tactical standpoint, but from a cultural one. Humanity's ability to adapt so quickly, their drive for exploration and self-improvement, was something the Xaril admired deeply. Through their growing alliance, Azir had become a vocal advocate for humanity, championing them in the face of skepticism from other species. But for every ally humanity gained, there were still those who doubted their readiness. The question on everyone's mind was simple: could humanity, a species that had only recently come into its own, truly handle the complexities of the universe? Let's talk about the future. President Harlan began addressing the room as the tension finally broke. We're here not just as Earth's representatives, but as humanity's representatives. We're new to this, yes. We don't have centuries of galactic history, but we've proven we can rise to challenges. And we're asking for a chance to work together to show you all that we don't just survive, we thrive. He paused for a moment, his eyes meeting Azir's across the table, then continued. Humanity's journey doesn't end here. It begins here. And as we face what lies ahead, we do so with a commitment to peace collaboration and mutual respect. We've been tested by war, by fear, and by the unknown. But we are here because we believe in our potential and in the potential of all life, from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to the smallest corner of our own planet. His words hung in the air as the leaders of the galaxy exchanged uncertain glances. For a moment there was silence, but it was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. The room was still uneasy, unsure whether humanity's enthusiasm and spirit were enough to match the weight of the challenges ahead. Then unexpectedly, a voice broke through the tension. It was from the Chrysol delegation whose leader had been quiet up until now. The Chrysol leader, a massive being encased in tough metallic armor, rose from their seat, their deep voice resonating throughout the chamber. You talk of survival, Earthlings, the Chrysol leader said. But survival is not enough. What you face ahead is not just about fighting off threats. It's about knowing when to fight and when to build. If you truly wish to join the galaxy, understand this. Peace is earned, not granted. It is forged in action, in cooperation, and in the willingness to sacrifice for something greater than yourselves. The room fell silent again. The weight of the Chrysol's words was undeniable. Humanity had passed the test of survival, but the true test was still ahead. One of cooperation, diplomacy, and perhaps most daunting of all, humility. President Harlan looked around the room, his gaze steady. We're ready to prove ourselves, not just as survivors, but as partners, as allies, and as equals. The next few hours of the summit were filled with heated discussions, debates, and even moments of laughter as Earth's representatives negotiated terms and future collaborations. Despite the challenges ahead, one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer just a fledgling species struggling to survive. They were now a force in the galaxy. But the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. There were still those who would test humanity, those who would challenge them, and those who would seek to use them for their own purposes. But no matter what came, humanity now stood ready not just to face the universe, but to shape it. And as the summit concluded, President Harlan couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet pride. Humanity had made it this far, and they would go even farther. The days following the summit were a whirlwind. Humanity, now firmly embedded in the galactic community, faced an overwhelming array of opportunities and responsibilities. The Galactic Council, a mix of faction species and ideologies, had extended a tentative hand toward Earth. Yet there was an undeniable air of caution that lingered, a feeling that Earth's inclusion was still a gamble for many species. Could humanity really be trusted with the vast cosmic powers at play? Were they truly prepared to face the challenges ahead? Or would they collapse under the weight of expectations? President Harlan, despite his optimism and commitment to Earth's future, couldn't shake the weight of this doubt. In the grand scheme of the universe, humanity was still a young species, untested beyond the confines of their home planet. But there was something in the air, something undeniable. Humanity had already proven that they were capable of more than survival. They had proven that they were adaptable, resilient, and perhaps most importantly, unpredictable. As Earth's newly appointed representatives made their way into the larger galactic fold, they quickly realized that their work had only just begun. Diplomatic discussions intensified with a sharp focus on galactic law, interspecies collaboration, and the delicate balance of power. Humanity was invited into a multitude of joint ventures, from technological exchanges to the exploration of distant star systems. But there were also lingering tensions, particularly from species like the Chrysol, who viewed humanity's ascension as a challenge to the established order. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's chief negotiator, found herself at the heart of a high-stakes meeting between Earth and the Galactic Council. The Chrysol, while initially reserved, had taken an active interest in humanity's advancement, but their caution was palpable. Their species had lived for eons, watching civilizations rise and fall, and they were not ready to take humanity's place at the table without a deeper understanding of their true nature. We don't doubt your ability to survive, Earthling. The Chrysol leader spoke once again, this time with a sharper tone. But survival alone is not enough. You must learn to wield power with wisdom. The universe is not a place for reckless ambition. Dr. Rodriguez, standing confidently at the table, responded without hesitation. We're not asking for power, Crystal leader. We're asking for the opportunity to contribute. We've seen what happens when power is abused. We've seen it in our own history. But we've learned. We've learned that survival is just the beginning. Now we must learn to build to create and to join you as true partners. The room fell silent. The other species of the Galactic Council, previously skeptical of humanity's readiness, now observed with intense interest. Humanity had just made a bold statement. They weren't there to simply take, they were there to share, to collaborate, to contribute to the greater good of the galaxy. The Crystal leader studied Dr. Rodriguez for a long moment before finally nodding. You speak with conviction. Perhaps there is something to humanity after all. The council room buzzed with energy as a handful of other alien species expressed similar cautious optimism. Humanity's spirit had won them not just recognition, but respect. It was clear now Earth was no longer just a fledgling species. They had proved themselves as an emerging force ready to play a role in the future of the galaxy. But even as these new alliances were being forged, President Harlan and his team knew that the greatest test was yet to come. There were still factions in the galaxy that saw humanity's rise as a threat. There were still those who viewed Earth's unpredictable nature as something to be wary of. And worst of all, there were forces in the far reaches of space beings, older and far more dangerous than the Xaril, who had taken note of humanity's recent ascent. The thought weighed heavily on Harlan as he sat in his office late one evening, gazing out at the stars. For the first time since humanity's inclusion in the galactic fold, he felt the full weight of the responsibility they now carried. The peace they had won, the alliances they had made were fragile. One misstep could unravel it all. The galaxy was not a playground. It was a place of complex politics, ancient power struggles, and hidden dangers. He was snapped from his thoughts by a soft chime on his desk. A message had come through a communication from one of the distant corners of the galaxy. Harlan's heart skipped a beat as he read the message. It was from an unknown species, one that the Galactic Council had warned about. They were known as the Veskari, a reclusive ancient race whose motives were shrouded in mystery. Some had speculated they were neutral in galactic affairs. Others believed they were a looming threat waiting for the right moment to strike. The message was brief, cryptic, and chilling. We have watched you, Earthlings. You have caught our attention. We will decide your fate soon. Prepare yourselves. The hairs on the back of Harlan's neck stood up. This was not the type of message one received from friends. The Veskari had no love for outsiders, and their reputation for swift, merciless action made even the most hardened galactic species nervous. President Harlan immediately called an emergency meeting with his senior advisors. As the room filled with murmurs and tense conversation, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of a much darker chapter for humanity. Who are the Veskari? General Adams asked, his voice filled with unease. They're one of the oldest species in the galaxy, Dr. Rodriguez answered. They've always remained apart from the galactic order. Some say they've been watching humanity for millennia, but they've never made a move until now. Harlan's fingers drummed against the table as he processed the implications. This isn't just a warning. This is a challenge. And just like that, humanity's moment of peace was shattered once more. It wasn't enough to have survived the Xaril's test. It seemed the galaxy had a far more complex game in mind. And this time, Earth would be facing a challenge that could push them to the very brink. We've learned how to survive, Harlan said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. But now we need to prove something greater. We need to show the galaxy that humanity isn't just a species to be tested or watched. We are a force to be reckoned with. It was a new kind of war, and the stakes were higher than ever. The days following the cryptic message from the Veskari were filled with a tense anticipation that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Across Earth, leaders, scientists, and military personnel worked tirelessly to prepare for the unknown threat that now loomed over them. The Galactic Council, still fresh from humanity's remarkable integration, now turned their attention toward the Veskari, a species that even the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy treated with wary respect. Humanity had been tested before, but this time the stakes were higher. The Veskari were not a species that sought mere conquest. They were ancient, enigmatic, and seemingly indifferent to the day-to-day struggles of the galaxy's civilizations. They only moved when they had a reason, when something caught their attention. and humanity had caught it. In the heart of Earth's military command center, President Harlan convened an emergency meeting with his top advisors. General Adams, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and a handful of Earth's brightest minds filled the room. The situation was dire, but Harlan's resolve was unwavering. He'd faced impossible odds before, and now humanity was once again standing at the precipice of a new dangerous frontier. We know little about the Veskari. Harlan began, his voice steady as he addressed the room. They've remained on the fringes of galactic politics, operating in the shadows. But their message was clear. They've been watching us. They believe we're a threat, or at least something worth noticing. The question is why. General Adams' arms crossed, nodded thoughtfully. It's not like the Xaril. The Xaril tested us to see if we were worthy of partnership. The Veskari, on the other hand, they've made no attempt at diplomacy. This isn't a game for them. They're serious. And if they've decided it's time to engage, it's because they see something in us that threatens them or intrigues them. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her brow furrowed. The Veskari have always been a mystery. We don't know what they want from us. We don't even know if they see humanity as a potential ally or an obstacle. But one thing is certain, they are not like the Xaril. The Xaril wanted to test us. The Veskari may want something far more dangerous. Harlan turned to face the large holographic display at the center of the room. A map of the galaxy glowed before them, pinpointing the Veskari's known territories. Their homeworld, a planet located in a distant and nearly inaccessible sector of space, remained one of the least explored regions in the galaxy. Only a handful of expeditions had ever ventured near it, and none had ever returned with clear answers. They're not interested in peace. They're interested in control, Harlan said, his voice resolute. And it's our job to figure out why we're suddenly on their radar. We need to know their capabilities, their intentions. We can't be caught off guard again. As Earth's leaders deliberated, their minds raced with a sense of urgency. While the Xaril had tested humanity with war, the Veskari were something else entirely. They weren't testing humanity's resolve. They were assessing its place in the larger galactic order. Were they an asset, a tool, or a potential threat? That question haunted every conversation in the war rooms, in the political chambers, and among the people of Earth. Meanwhile, humanity's scientists and engineers worked feverishly to bolster Earth's defenses. They knew the Veskari were not likely to engage in traditional warfare. Their technology was ancient, possibly more advanced than anything humanity had seen. But humanity had one advantage: they understood the importance of adaptability. If the Veskari's plan was to test humanity, then they were playing into humanity's greatest strength, the ability to pivot, innovate, and fight with an unrelenting will to survive. We need to think outside the box, Dr. Rodriguez suggested during a closed-door strategy session. The Veskari won't play by conventional rules. We have to anticipate the unexpected. What do we know about them that might give us an edge? General Adams tapped the table thoughtfully. They're a species of patience, it seems. They've been observing us for years, maybe centuries. Whatever their reason for approaching us, it's not because they fear us. They're calculating our potential. I think you're right, Harlan said, his eyes narrowing. We need to approach this cautiously. We can't provoke them, but we can't appear weak either. The one thing the Veskari cannot afford is to underestimate us. If they truly see something in us, then it's time we show them we can stand tall in the galaxy. As plans for Earth's response to the Veskari began to take shape, the military and diplomatic channels were flooded with updates. Humanity would need to send a delegation to the Veskari homeworld, a negotiation or confrontation, depending on how things unfolded. But even as this plan solidified, Earth's leadership knew one thing for sure: no matter how much they had already proven, this was a test unlike any other. This was a battle for Earth's future in the galaxy. The following week, Earth's fleet of diplomatic ships, escorted by Earth's best defense forces, set course for the Veskari homeworld. The ships were armed, but they were not meant for war. Their mission was clear: to meet the Veskari, understand their motives, and if possible, negotiate a peaceful resolution. As the ships traveled through the stars, Harlan stood on the command deck, staring out into the vast expanse of space. He could feel the weight of this moment, the realization that humanity was no longer just defending their home. They were stepping into a larger galaxy, one filled with dangers, uncertainties, and perhaps even greater powers than they had ever imagined. The Veskari had made their intentions clear. Now humanity had to make theirs. They weren't going to cower in the face of the unknown. They weren't going to turn back, not now that they had fought for their place in the galaxy. Whatever came next, humanity was ready. And for the first time, Harlan allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps humanity wasn't just ready to survive in the galaxy. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were ready to thrive. The future was vast and it awaited them. The journey to the Veskari homeworld was long as expected. It was a path through uncharted space, a territory that was off limits to most, with only a few scattered uncertain records of those who had tried and failed to explore it. Earth's fleet of diplomatic ships, now fully armed for defense but still carrying a mostly peaceful mission, moved in a formation that reflected the seriousness of the task ahead. The hum of their engines, the calculated trajectory, everything was part of the strategy, a dance between diplomacy and caution. In the command room of the lead ship, President Harlan stood in front of a window gazing into the infinite expanse of stars. Beside him stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the brilliant scientist who had become humanity's chief negotiator in the galactic community. She watched him, knowing what he was thinking. He was preparing for the moment that would change everything. "We're approaching their space," Harlan murmured, his voice steady but with the edge of anticipation. "Any last-minute thoughts before we make contact?" Rodriguez turned her gaze toward the display. "I'm still not entirely sure what to expect from them, Harlan. We've only seen fragments of their culture. No one knows how they'll respond to a direct invitation." Harlan nodded. "They've watched us for 1,000 years. They must know everything they need to know. I just hope they're willing to talk." There was a long pause, the weight of their mission settling in. It wasn't just about negotiating for peace, it was about humanity's place in the cosmos. This wasn't just a one-time meeting. This was the beginning of a new phase for Earth. The Veskari were not just an ancient species, they were an immense power, and humanity was about to stand toe-to-toe with them. The fleet finally arrived at the outer rim of Veskari space, a dead zone of sorts, where communications had been famously unreliable and few ships dared to venture. As Earth ships crossed into the Veskari-controlled sector, the tension on the bridge grew palpable. A silent countdown began in Harlan's mind. The Veskari, it seemed, were waiting for them. Minutes passed. Then suddenly a signal. A single burst of communication, not just to Earth's ships, but to the entire fleet, piercing through the cosmic static that had filled the sector. The voice that came through was as cold as space itself. "This is Veskari Command. State your intent." It was blunt, direct, and devoid of the typical pleasantries that characterize galactic diplomacy. There was no greeting, no inquiry into Earth's well-being, just a demand for answers. Harlan took a deep breath and stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "This is President Harlan of Earth. We come in peace. We've received your message and seek to understand your intentions. We are not here to fight. We seek cooperation and collaboration, nothing more." The silence on the other end was almost deafening. A few seconds passed before the voice of the Veskari commander responded. "You have entered our territory, human. This is not a place for negotiations. We do not engage in petty diplomacy. You have been allowed to cross our borders because your species has proven interesting. But do not mistake this for an invitation." Harlan stood tall, his expression unwavering. "We are not here to ask for permission. We are here because humanity's survival and future lie in this moment. We don't just want to survive. We want to be part of this galaxy, to contribute, to learn, and to offer our strength when needed." Another long pause, and then something unexpected, a sound almost like a deep resonance, filled the communication channel. The Veskari weren't speaking, but Harlan could sense something shifting, something akin to a hum or vibration in the space between them. A voice, softer now and yet still chilling in its matter-of-fact tone, emerged from the static. "You claim to seek peace, but you have already made a grave mistake." Harlan felt a chill. "A mistake? How? You have assumed that we do not already know what your species is capable of. You have already proven that you are unpredictable, and that is both your greatest strength and your most dangerous flaw." The words hung in the air like an unspoken threat. The Veskari had not underestimated humanity, nor had they believed humanity's claims of peace. It was something else, something deeper in the fabric of the universe, that was at play. The Veskari were not afraid of humanity's firepower. No, they had known from the start that humanity would fight back. But this was a different kind of power they were measuring. "What do you want from us then?" Harlan asked, pushing back against the tension. "You know we've already faced trials. You've tested us in ways no other species has. What more do you need from us to know we can be trusted?" There was a long silence. The Veskari, it seemed, were considering their words carefully. Then the voice spoke again, this time, with a cold edge of finality. You seek to be tested again, human. But you are not the only species in this galaxy that seeks control, that seeks dominance. Do not mistake your survival for victory. The universe will always offer greater challenges. You will always be tested. The Veskari had made one thing clear: peace wasn't enough. Survival wasn't enough. Humanity was going to face far greater trials than they had ever imagined. And the Veskari weren't here to guide them, they were here to watch. Your fate, the Veskari voice concluded, is not in your hands alone. It is in the hands of the galaxy. With that, the communication cut out, leaving the Earth delegation in stunned silence. The Veskari had not offered cooperation. They had not invited humanity to join the galactic order. Instead, they had issued a grim warning: humanity's survival, its place in the stars, was not assured. The true test had yet to come. Harlan turned toward Dr. Rodriguez, who was standing with her arms folded, her face a mask of uncertainty. What does this mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Harlan replied. But I think we've just learned that the galaxy's tests are far from over. For the first time since the war with the Xaril, Harlan felt a deep, unsettling truth sink into his bones. Humanity had survived, yes, but they were only just beginning to understand the challenges they would face. The Veskari had made their intentions clear: not to conquer, but to challenge. And whether humanity was ready or not, the galaxy's trials were waiting for them. As Earth's fleet drifted further into Veskari space, President Harlan knew one thing: humanity had faced wars, betrayals, and trials of survival. But the true test was still ahead. The stakes had just been raised. In the days following the Veskari transmission, Earth's leadership scrambled to process the gravity of what had just transpired. The Veskari, a race so old and cryptic that even the most advanced galactic societies treated them with a mixture of respect and fear, had sent a chilling message. They had not come to offer peace or even cooperation. They had come to issue a warning, one that shook humanity to its core. The Veskari had said it plainly: survival was not enough. They wanted to see humanity prove it could endure challenges far greater than they had faced before. The galaxy was filled with dangers, and the Veskari were watching, waiting, assessing whether humanity could rise to meet them. President Harlan, sitting in the dimly lit war room, ran his hands through his hair. He was still processing the exchange. His thoughts were filled with a swirling storm of uncertainty and resolve. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood nearby, staring out the observation window at the distant stars. It felt as though the weight of the universe had suddenly pressed down on their shoulders. There was no turning back now. The Veskari had made their point. Clear: humanity was no longer a passive species waiting in the shadows. They were a player on the galactic stage, but they would have to prove their worth over and over again. I thought we were prepared for this, Harlan muttered, pacing. We fought the Xaril, stood our ground against their tests. But this is different. Rodriguez turned to face him, her expression a mix of determination and wariness. We're facing something we can't predict, Harlan. The Veskari don't care about our survival. They care about our ability to adapt to the chaos around us. The war with the Xaril was just a test, a prelude. That's the problem, Harlan said, rubbing his temples. The galaxy is full of these tests. First the Xaril, now the Veskari. We've passed the test so far, but we've never faced anything like the Veskari. They're not interested in diplomacy. They want us to prove ourselves worthy. So what do we do now? Rodriguez asked. Harlan stopped pacing and looked at her with a newfound resolve. We do what we always do. We fight for what's ours. We fight to survive. And this time we do it knowing that the stakes are higher than we've ever imagined. If the Veskari want us to prove ourselves, then we will. As Earth's leadership began to formulate a new strategy for dealing with the Veskari's warning, the broader public was none the wiser. In the aftermath of the war with the Xaril, humanity had experienced an unusual surge of optimism. They had faced an invasion and emerged victorious, standing shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's most advanced species. Now they were entering a new chapter, a chapter where humanity's place among the stars was no longer a question, but a fact. But there were whispers, concerns about the Veskari's true intentions. Humanity had proven itself on the battlefield, but the universe was vast, and not all threats were as easily defeated as the Xaril. Some of Earth's brightest minds now wondered, was this newfound place in the galaxy worth the risks? One such mind belonged to General Adams, who had been instrumental in leading Earth's defense forces during the war with the Xaril. Now sitting alone in his office, he watched the stars through a large window. He couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge had only just begun. The Veskari had made it clear that humanity was being tested for a purpose, but the nature of that test remained a mystery. They were playing a long game, one that would involve more than just military might. Adams had seen enough of the galaxy's complexities to know that survival was no longer about firepower. It was about strategy, alliances, and most importantly, adaptability. If the Veskari think we're ready for this test, Adams muttered to himself, then they've got another thing coming. The following weeks were filled with preparations. Earth's military continued to strengthen its defenses, but the focus now was on something deeper, understanding the true scope of the Veskari's influence. The Veskari had never been known for their diplomacy, and now that humanity was on their radar, it was clear that any future confrontation would be more than just a battle for survival. It would be a test of humanity's ability to endure, to adapt, and to rise to the challenges presented by a galaxy filled with ancient power struggles. Dr. Rodriguez and Harlan spent long hours discussing strategies. Their meetings were filled with tension, but also a shared determination. Earth had no choice but to prove its worth, and humanity had never been a species to back down from a challenge. It was time for the next phase of their journey. This isn't just about surviving threats anymore, Rodriguez said during one late-night session. It's about showing the galaxy that we're not just survivors. We're builders. We're creators. If the Veskari want to test us, then we need to show them that humanity is ready to take its place alongside the great civilizations of the galaxy. Harlan looked at her, his eyes hardening with resolve. And if the galaxy tries to tear us down, we'll rebuild. We'll show them that humanity can thrive under any condition. It wasn't just about facing another alien race. It was about facing the unknown. And it was about showing that humanity, despite its flaws, had something none of the galactic powers could match: a relentless will to survive, to grow, and to adapt. If the Veskari were watching, and they were, then humanity would prove that it wasn't just capable of surviving the galaxy's trials. They would prove that they were capable of mastering them. In the weeks that followed, Earth's diplomatic corps, military and scientific teams worked in unison to prepare for the Veskari's next move. The Galactic Council sent occasional updates hinting at the larger cosmic forces at play, but humanity knew the truth: the test wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As President Harlan stood in the command center overseeing the final preparations for Earth's next step into galactic politics, he couldn't help but think back to the moment when humanity first encountered the Xaril. The fear, the uncertainty, they had come so far. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had humanity's potential. "We're not backing down," Harlan said quietly to himself, gazing out into the infinite expanse of stars. Not this time. The challenge of the Veskari was just the beginning, and Earth was ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had always been vast, distant, and largely unexplored, but now it was beginning to feel far too close. Earth's place within it had changed, no longer just an isolated speck of life in a forgotten corner of the universe. Humanity was now thrust into the limelight, surrounded by powers far beyond what they had ever imagined. And as they began their slow but determined march forward, one thing became clear: humanity would not just be participants in the galaxy's future, they would help define it. The Veskari's cryptic message had cast a long shadow, and as the days turned into weeks, the uncertainty that came with it loomed large. Earth's leaders, military commanders, and diplomats were working tirelessly to prepare for what would come next. But the truth was, no one truly knew what that would be. The Veskari were a species of unfathomable age, with knowledge of galactic history that spanned eons. They had issued their challenge, and now humanity had to answer it, not with more war, not with force, but with a new kind of strength. The strength to prove that humanity could thrive not just on Earth, but in the vast, unpredictable cosmos. Harlan stood before the large holographic display in the war room, the flickering lights casting a shadow over his face. The stars outside the window shimmered with possibilities, yet the question remained: could humanity prove its worth to the Veskari and the other galactic powers that had yet to fully accept them? "I think we're at a crossroads," Harlan said, breaking the silence. "Our survival in the galaxy isn't going to be determined by our firepower. It's going to be determined by our ability to adapt and grow in the face of whatever challenges come our way. The Veskari want us to prove that we're ready for whatever the galaxy has to throw at us. General Adams, standing nearby, nodded. And so far, we've done nothing but rise to every challenge they've thrown our way. But this is different. The Veskari aren't just watching us, they're judging us. They want to know if we can handle the pressure. Can we make it in this galaxy without falling apart? Or are we just a species that got lucky? Dr. Rodriguez, ever the optimist, glanced at the display where plans for future galactic exploration were being drawn up. We've already proven our resilience, our adaptability. We don't know everything the galaxy holds, but we can face whatever it brings. We've been tested and we've survived, and that's why we're here now, because we've shown we can handle the trials, however strange or unpredictable they may be. Exactly, Harlan said, turning to face his advisors. Survival is just the beginning. The Veskari will keep testing us, but they won't stop us. We'll prove that humanity isn't just a species that survives under duress. We'll show them we can learn, we can grow, and we can lead in this galaxy. In the days that followed, the atmosphere on Earth began to shift. There was a sense of anticipation, even excitement in the air. People once consumed with fear over humanity's place in the galaxy now found themselves with a renewed sense of purpose. The sense of isolation that had once defined humanity's existence was fading. They were no longer just Earth's inhabitants, they were citizens of a larger universe. But even as the diplomatic meetings continued and preparations for further galactic exploration were set into motion, a darker truth began to surface. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. The Veskari, while observing humanity, were not the only threat lurking in the shadows. There were other older forces in the universe, beings whose motivations remained unclear and whose power had yet to be tested by humanity's resistance. As Earth's military began to bolster its defenses, Harlan couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the worst was still ahead. There were rumors of a growing conflict among galactic factions, some of which had not yet made their intentions known. The Veskari were just one piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that humanity now found itself squarely in the middle of. We've been handed a chance, Harlan said, addressing the gathered leaders of Earth. But that chance comes with risks. The galaxy is full of dangers, and we don't know what threats are out there lurking just beyond our reach. But we're not backing down. We've come too far to turn back now. Across the room, Dr. Rodriguez took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Humanity doesn't just survive challenges. We turn them into opportunities. The Veskari want to test us. We'll show them we can thrive. The galaxy won't just be our proving ground, it will be our home. General Adams nodded. The Veskari have pushed us to our limits, but I believe we can prove ourselves not just to them, but to the galaxy as a whole. We'll face whatever comes next head-on with the same resilience and ingenuity that's carried us this far. The room fell into silence as Earth's leaders and military personnel pondered their next steps. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with both peril and promise, but the choice had been made. Humanity was no longer just a passive observer in the galaxy. They were active participants in shaping the future. As Earth's fleet prepared for the next phase of exploration, President Harlan stood at the head of the table, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. The galaxy was full of mystery, but it was also full of possibility. Humanity had been tested by the Veskari and had emerged stronger. Now it was time for the next chapter to unfold. Humanity would continue to adapt. They would continue to evolve. And they would never stop fighting for their place in the universe. The challenges ahead were daunting, but Harlan knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready. And this was just the beginning. Humanity's journey into the galaxy has only just begun, and with each challenge they prove that their strength lies not only in survival, but in their ability to adapt and thrive. The future, filled with uncertainty and opportunity, awaits them, an open expanse where they must continue to prove their worth among the stars. Thank you for experiencing this story with me. If you ever wish to continue the adventure or explore new ones, feel free to reach out.